Oscars 2026 final nomination predictions, January of 2026. Make sure you subscribe. Yeah, I completely forgot about that clapboard intro. I keep forgetting to do that in the last few award show prediction videos because I've been focusing on other videos to be precise. But it is that time, folks. We started, well, technically for me, I started at the end of August. And now we are here to do it. Today, I'm recording this on January 16th. It is the final day of the Oscars nomination balloting. And then this Thursday, January 22nd, will be the day that we've all been waiting for. The Oscar nominations. And see what gets in, what gets snubbed, and what will be part of my Oscar movie marathon of this year, after the award season always comes to an end. And after predicting the top 8 categories for the past few months from August through December, it is now time to do all 24 categories. And I can finally get to say 24 again because, of course, with the introduction of the new Best Casting category. So, for those who have not followed my award show predictions, my name is Brian. I've been doing this for a very long time now. This is actually technically my 10th year doing nomination predictions, although I had taken down a lot of my older Oscar nomination predictions in the past, with the exception of the reaction videos to the nominations since the year of the 2016 film. So, yeah, I can't believe this is actually going to be my 10th year doing a video like this, but my 10th year doing nomination reactions, so that's just insane how we went up from one way, shape, or form. And of course, I won't be able to watch them live because I have IRL stuff to do, so it will not be probably up until later that night. So that's kind of unfortunate, but it is time for me to do the final Oscar nomination predictions on all 24 categories. And, of course, for my courtesy through my predictions, I use the ever so greatly used Awards Expert app. Now, obviously, there is no right or wrong answers in a lot of the categories, of course. Some of them are just completely total guesses, and some of them are just going to make bold predictions of what could actually get snubbed. Now, for those who had followed me throughout the past few years, normally, when I would do the final nomination predictions, I would usually go by the order of last year's awards nomination announcement video, but this year I'm just going to be simple and go in a specific order here. I will be starting up with the short films first, then all the technical categories, then the 3 main featured film categories, and then of course the order of the top 8 from screenplay to acting to directing to best picture. Normally a lot of people would start with best picture first, but I always save that the best for last. It makes sense. Like, just start up with the best ones nearing the end of the video, and then just start up and getting some of the categories to start this up to see what everyone would go and watch throughout the whole way through, because probably a lot of people would just skip to the main parts, but I obviously will have a chapter structure, of course, and all of these. So, with that being said, I think it's now time to begin my final predictions in all 24 categories and lock them in. So let's start this up with Best Live Action Short Film. I have Otto, Dad's Not Home, Extremist, Rock, Paper, Scissors, and The Singers. I did intend to go with Butcher Stain and Jane Austen's period drama. And there's all the subject matters really could be something, but Otto feels like it's probably going to be the most likely to get nominated here because the subject matter of what is about a school, you-know-what. And it would be the most likely to get nominated, but it would most likely not be the one to actually win because if you remember last year, they didn't go with Alien. They went with I Am Not a Robot. Dad's Not Home, that's dealing with dementia and stuff like that, and I think a lot of members of the Academy would really feel like what's going on right now with the realms of Alzheimer's and dementia. The Singers, it kind of gives me a bit of Sing Sing vibes, oddly enough, even though it's a completely different movie, even though this is short. But Rock, Paper, Scissors was actually last year's BAFTA winner for Best British Short Film. And with that, I'm confident of that getting in there. Any of them could potentially get in this. I think one of them, I think it's my friend's, friend of Dorothy, I believe that has Stephen Fry in it. So that's something. I know Jane Austen's period drama is like a satire on, I think, Pride and Prejudice, but I think not a lot of the time the short film branch likes to go with comedic short films. For Best Documentary Short Film, I have All the Empty Rooms, All the Walls Came Down, Armed Only with the Camera, The Life and Death of Brett Renard, Classroom 4, and On Healing Land, Birds Preached. There are a lot that kind of really do stand out with some of the subject matters. Chasing Time, actually, is a sequel to the Oscar-nominated documentary film Chasing Ice, which earned an original song nomination for Before My Time. It didn't get in the documentary feature category, but it is actually a sequel to that film. But I would have said that if Chasing Ice was nominated in the documentary feature category, but since it was up for song that year, back in 2012, I am not going with that one. And for Best Animated Short, I have Autocar, Iru, I Died in Irpin, Retirement Plan, and Snow Bear. Now, when I was looking at all these animated shorts, like a lot of the animation styles has a lot of things. There are 3 of them here in the 15 that are actually nominated at the Annie Awards, which are Cardboard, The Girl Who Cried Pearls, and Snow Bear. Last year, I actually did predicted all 4 that were nominated, the Annies last year, to get nominated, and they did win 3 out of 4 in them. But I only am going to go with 1 out of the 5. Snow Bear is actually directed by Aaron Blaise, a former Disney animator who also made the Oscar-nominated Brother Bear, which I didn't really care for. If you've seen my animated tier list video that came out the previous day, not really big on that film, but apparently he did the entire movie all by himself, the short film, excuse me, so that feels like probably the front runner. Iru is actually from Cartoon Saloon, so that could be something. Retirement Plan, Domhnall Gleeson's the narrator in, and from what I heard, it's very interesting. Autocar seems to be the one to be the favorite, and Forever Green and Snow Bear are kind of 2 environmental ones that are kind of, I think, very similar, I believe, from what I've been hearing. But I'm just going to go with Snow Bear because it's probably the most notable one that has the story interesting enough of how behind the scenes is in general. On to the technical categories, and we start up with ABC's favorite category, Best Original Song, and I could almost see this category being discontinued after the 100th Oscars, once the Oscars decided when they start doing their broadcasting on YouTube. So that would make the Academy get a lot more creative freedom, and probably the biggest thing I could almost see is they discontinued this category because ABC just wants the ratings. But here's the thing. Does anyone not have Dear Me from Diane Warren Relentless, The Girl in the Bubble from Wicked for Good, Golden from K-Pop Demon Hunters, I Lied to You from Sinners, and Train Dreams from Train Dreams? It's just that would Wicked for Good or Sinners get the double nomination? I don't really think so. There is obviously 3 documentaries on the short list here, but we already know what the documentary one is, the reserved nomination slot for Diane Warren, of course. Although Come See Me in the Good Light is on the documentary feature short list. And you have Sarah Bareilles and Brandon Charlie, who was actually nominated last year for Never Too Late from Elton John, Never Too Late, behind the song. And Dying to Live from Billy Idol, Should Be Dead. J. Ralph, who was nominated a couple of times in the documentary category, this category for 3 documentaries in the last decade. I mentioned Chasing Ice, but also with Racing Extinction and Jim the James Foley Story. I would not be surprised if he does make it. He did get shortlisted for Dustin Ash from, I think, The Story of Dustin Ash or something like that. I did predict that 3 years ago, but that didn't happen. I would have said that a little bit more so if Diane Warren was not here, of course. But Sinners and Wicked for Good could get the double nominations. But I'm a little bit worried that The Girl in the Bubble might be the vulnerable one because of how Wicked for Good is not really doing well in the industry awards-wise. So that could be the big, massive problem. But I think ABC wants this song to be here so they can have Ariana Grande perform it on stage. But you're also going to get Kesha. Obviously, we know Huntrix, the singing voices, are going to do it. How many times Golden's going to be performed live? I know it was at the Macy's Parade. I think it was at a Christmas holiday iHeartRadio thing. Dick Clark's New Year's Rocket Eve, and now the Oscars. And I believe also the Grammys. So that's going to be like 5 times it's going to be performing at a live event. It's going to get very tiring. But I think everyone's going to go with the 5 we all know what it's going to be. For makeup and hairstyling, I have Frankenstein, Sinners, The Smashing Machine, The Ugly Stepsister, and Wicked for Good. It is kind of a toss-up between one of the 2 international ones, non-English ones, that are in the shortlist between that and Kokoro, which is actually on the international feature shortlist. But I think with the Academy's big thing on horror this year, with Sinners and Frankenstein, and even with Weapons, it kind of makes sense, I would say, how big the horror genre has been in this year's Oscars. I think The Ugly Stepsister could come along with it. Now, this is one of the 3 technical categories that do not have a short list, so this one is very, very open, of course, and that is costume design. I have Frankenstein, Hamnet, Sinners, The Ugly Stepsister, and Wicked for Good. So yeah, I'm going with The Ugly Stepsister as a surprise nomination here, and this is kind of reminded me, because I saw somebody doing a prediction about this, and how if many people in the makeup branch if some of them are also members of the costume designers branch, and or some people know that this movie was on the short list and they just want to watch it, how this insane horror movie it is, and they would see the costumes on it, and it would be kind of reminding me of when the 2020 Pinocchio movie from Matteo Garrone, the Italian one, starring Roberto Benigni as Geppetto, got in this category out of nowhere. That could be what The Ugly Stepsister could be. I was leaning towards Hedda originally. I would have said a little bit more if it had more of appearance in the short list, like if it was in the cinematographer short list or something like that, or even casting. It is a possibility. One of the only 2 categories that The Testament of Anne Lee could actually show up here, because it got shut out of the short list. Kiss of the Spider-Woman, I believe, was at Critics' Choice. Marty Supreme could just be a blank thing. Same thing with One Battle After Another. But I would say, as you might have seen, don't be surprised if Snow White gets in here. Now, I know not all Disney live-action remakes do get in this category, but when it's sometimes based on the famous princess ones, yeah, that's the thing, because I know the first Maleficent got in this one. Obviously, even though it's not a princess movie, but Burton's Alice in Wonderland won this. Beauty and the Beast got in this. I know Aladdin didn't, so if Aladdin was in, if they did nominate all the princess live-action remakes, including, Aladdin and Maleficent Mistress of Evil, I would have said Snow White. So yeah, this is the one place I would not be surprised people would get pissed off if Snow White gets nominated here just for this category. But Disney live-action remakes kind of do decently well getting nominated, so it is, I don't have it getting in, but it's not in the realm of possibility, even though a lot of people do hate that remake. Then in terms of production design, I have Begonia, Frankenstein, Hamnet, Sinners, and Wicked for Good. It is interesting for me to go more of a bigger contemporary one here with Begonia on this lineup, but with the Guilds and the BAFTA long list having a massive higher resurgence for Begonia, and I think the fact that it was on BAFTA long list, I'm a little bit more confident maybe going with Begonia on this lineup. Another category, Marty Supreme and One Battle After Another could get in. Avatar, Fire and Ash, possibility, but a lot of people could see the Fantastic Four, The First Steps, getting in this one. I would have said that if it was on, the visual effects shortlist. And then another category with The Testament of Anne Lee could have showed up. For original score, I have Begonia, Frankenstein, One Battle After Another, Sinners, and Wicked for Good. I feel like they're going to probably do that shit. Now, a lot of people are predicting Hamnet here. And there is actually one pre-existing music piece that is in it that a lot of people think is the reason why it's going to get in. But we probably would have seen that ineligible, kind of similar why Arrival wasn't, almost 9 years ago. So I think there might be a lot of people in the music branch that might not go with it. But then again, I am predicting another movie that has pre-existing music to get in because I think they're going to do that shit with Wicked for Good. I mean, they did nominate the entire Star Wars trilogy on this. They nominated Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Why not Wicked for Good? Because there's always that one score they go with that doesn't have any major precursors. Like The Five Bloods, for an example. And I think even the first Wicked had no precursors. It wasn't at Critics' Choice Globe or at, I don't know, I don't remember if it was at Critics' Choice, but definitely not Globe or BAFTA. So I think they are definitely going to do that shit, even though Marty Supreme does really make a lot of sense, or Surratt. But I think with Wicked for Good being shortlisted on the BAFTA shortlist, as they call it, I call it because they call it long list, I think it actually might actually happen. For sound, I have F1 the movie, which I think that's what the Academy has to call it. Frankenstein, One Battle After Another's, Sinners, and Surratt. I'm throwing a little bit of a curveball and going with Surratt on this one. I did have Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning in this category, and it is still a possibility. And I think it's between those 7 I can see making it in. Avatar: Fire and Ash is also on the edge, as well as Wicked for Good. I think Superman and Springsteen Deliver Me from Manoa are the 2 that are definitely not going to be the ones. For visual effects, I have Avatar, Fire and Ash, Frankenstein, Sinners, Superman, and Wicked for Good. I know, I think Superman did well at the visual effects guilds, but I think sometimes there's always that one movie that doesn't do well at the visual effects guilds and does still get the Oscar nomination, I believe. That could be the thing. I think you have the 2 Best Picture nominees with Frankenstein and Sinners, and hearing a little bit more about Sinners' effects of how they did it, it could be a possibility. It's just that this Avatar's award to lose, and I think Wicked could be it. F1 the movie, The Lost Bust, and Jurassic World Rebirth did well at the Visual Effects Society guilds as well, from what I heard, especially The Lost Bust. And I know F1 the movie got in at PGA, but it's just like any of these are just around possibility, except for maybe Tron Ares and maybe The Electric State. For film editing, I have Begonia, F1 the movie, Marty Supreme, One Battle After Another, and Sinners. I think Begonia is going to overperform a little bit than a lot of people are thinking of, because the way how the BAFTA long list and the guilds have been really doing that well, I think it might get something here to show bigger, more resurgence for a lot of people who are watching it again, revisiting it. I was tended not to go with F1 the movie after it won the Critics' Choice Award, because I believe Challengers won that last year and got snubbed. But the difference is F1 the movie is at least got that Producers Guild nomination. So that's the reason why I'm going with it. Which means I left out Frankenstein, Hamnet, and Sentimental Value. After the PGA nomination, they could go Inspired with Weapons. If they really do want to go Inspired, as you might have seen on my other bottom 5 candidates, they could go Inspired and say My Undesirable Friends Part 1 Lost Air in Moscow, because of the 6-hour length it has. But if they would nominate a documentary for editing, if there was a short list, it probably would be The Perfect Neighbor. But I don't have that as a possibility because they don't really recognize any documentaries as they used to, even though they only nominated 2 in this category with Woodstock and Hoop Dreams, and that's it. Like, many people think there should be a lot more documentaries that should be getting recognized in this category. If there was a short list, The Perfect Neighbor would be the candidate, but in terms of general right now, since every movie could be eligible, I would say My Undesirable Friends Part 1 as if they want to go the inspired documentary route, but I don't think that's not going to happen. So, if there is showing that Hamnet and Frankenstein might be vulnerable for a Best Picture win, to be precise, they would have to miss film editing. For cinematography, I have Frankenstein, Hamnet, One Battle After Another, Sinners, and Train Dreams. There is, at least I would say in terms of the Oscars shortlist, 3 films that I believe are also, in BAFTA long list could happen, with Begonia, F1 the movie, and Marty Supreme. I don't think Begonia will overperform that much, but I could almost see it making it in this category. Same thing with Marty Supreme. I would have been more saying F1 the movie if Ford versus Ferrari would have gotten nominated back in 2019. But since it didn't, I am not going with F1, even though it is from Claudia Miranda, who won for Life of Pi, but I don't think so. I know Nouvelle Vague could have been a possibility, but I believe that did not make it in the Cinematographer's Guild, I believe. Train Dreams did win the Critics' Choice Award, which sometimes might not be a good move, but I think with the Guild resurgence with the PGA nomination, I think it might be fine. And then comes in the new category, Best Casting. Now, this could go one way, shape, or form. Because this 5, right now I have, you can basically say it's right now the SAG 5, being Frankenstein, Hamnet, Marty Supreme, One Battle After Another, and Sinners. But this could also be the 5 for Best Casting at the BAFTAs as well, because all 5 of them are also on the BAFTA long list as well for this, as well as Sentimental Value, which I did go with it, but I think the movie might underperform a little bit because I think they are really going to try to nominate a lot on, obviously, the bigger movies, which I think these might be the top 5 Oscar movies if there was a realm of 5 Oscar nominations, but I'm not really confident in that because we would not know. But I feel like, yeah, even though matching the SAG 5 might not be the best move, but this could actually also be the BAFTA 5 as well. And then we're into documentary feature, and oh boy, there is a lot here. There's I could say maybe 10 candidates here. One I'm just realizing I have at number 13, but I have to move that up to number 10 in the video after I finish recording this. So what you would be seeing in the screenshot might be incorrect. But I would have to move that up to number 10. But yeah, documentary feature, I would say there are at least 10 candidates that could actually are battling out for the nomination. And this is always one of my worst categories. Although I think I did decent getting 3 out of 5 last year, but it's not that easy because there is that one that can actually legit get snubbed. I have Apocalypse in the Tropics, Cutting Through Rocks, My Undesirable Friends Part 1, Lost Air in Moscow, The Perfect Neighbor, and 20,000 Meters to Andrivka. Excuse me. So, as you might have seen, I have The Perfect Neighbor at number 5 because, as the most likely to get nominated, not in terms of winning, because the thing about it is, if you win the Critics' Choice Documentary Awards for Best Documentary Feature, you could potentially actually be screwed, because you might actually get snubbed. But with The Perfect Neighbor showing up, obviously at the Guilds, BAFTA long list, I think it's at Indie Spirits, and showing at Film Editing at the main Critics' Choice Awards, and I think it had a lot of talked about, I think it was even mentioned, I believe, on Good Morning America, I believe. It has to kind of make it, even though I'm a little bit worried about going with it. Same thing with 20,000 Meters to Andrivka, because normally the filmmaker from a previous winning film doesn't usually make it in for their follow-up nomination. But then again, you also have Laura Poitras, who did Citizen 4, being one of the directors of Cover Up. You have one of the directors of Capturing the Fright Man doing The Alabama Solution. Mr. Nobody Against Putin was Denmark's submission in the international feature category. Siege, which would now be in my number 10 slot when I push that up off camera. That won won a big prize at the Sundance Film Festival, and I think I might regret not going with it. Folk Tales are from the filmmakers that did Jesus Camp. Cover Up, I mentioned Laura Poitras, and Come See Me in the Good Lights from the guy who did Goodnight Oppie, and it's on the song short list. Apocalypse in the Tropics, that's from the woman who did The Edge of Democracy. But the two I think I could actually see I'm the more confident in, more so than the actual frontrunners, are Cutting Through Rocks and My Undesirable Friends. My Undesirable Friends obviously did win the Gotham Award, and it's up at Indie Spirits, and I kind of mentioned it could be inspired. If The Perfect Neighbor does get the snub, even though I'm not predicting it, I would think My Undesirable Friends would probably be the frontrunner. But Cutting Through Rocks, I'm more confident in now, not because of also its DGA nomination, but the fact is what's going on right now in Iran, because obviously the subject matter is about women in Iran, but what's going on right now with the protests in that country, I think that maybe is kind of a perfect timing during the voting process, and the documentary branch would remember that watching that film and know what's going on in their country right now and would nominate the movie just to make a statement out of it. So I think I'm a little bit comfortable with going with Cutting Through Rocks in this lineup. I would say it's between those two. If The Perfect Neighbor does get the snub, but if The Perfect Neighbor does show up this Thursday, basically the race is kind of over because the front runner would actually make it. So we'll see if it would join the levels of Summer of Soul of this decade, where the front runner does make it and does get the win. So I barely have in the fifth slot, but it could be very snubbable. And now into international feature. The question is this going to be the Neon Award? Basically, the 5 Neon films would make it, right? Well, almost, but I don't think one is not going to make it, especially what's been going on recently. So, if they are going by the nomination announcements, if they're going by the country order, you got to remember that, but I'm just going to go by the film titles here. So, I have, from France, It Was Just an Accident. From Brazil, The Secret Agent. From Norway, Sentimental Value. From Spain, Surat. And from Tunisia, The Voice of Hin Rajab. So, yep, I had decided to snub the Park Chan-wook's No Other Choice here. The BAFTAs didn't really care about the movie other than for the film not in the English language category. And obviously, the guilds didn't took to it, of course, especially, obviously, since Park Chan-wook lost his membership to the Writers Guild when he wrote this film during the strikes. So I wonder if a lot of members in the industry know about that and they would just backlash the movie, specifically in this branch, to say, we're not nominating the movie because you wrote this film during the strikes. And that could be the big thing. I know many people bring up, what about the Critics' Choice shortlist? Or what about the Globe nomination? Well, remember, Critics' Choice and Globe nominations don't really matter because none of the voters are Oscar voters. Because I think Surat is more likely than No Other Choice because with his Franklin appearance on the shortlist. And I am more comfortable with The Voice of Hin Rajab after when Kadril Ben Hernina was one of the 5 female that was shortlisted for directing at the BAFTAs. Even though that's obviously kind of a gender thing, obviously rule they have to do with. But the fact that she got in there, and Park Chan-wook was not one of the 5 men for director since they have nominated before for Decision to Leave, that's kind of a big missing. But I think we are agreeing that it's Sentimental Value, The Secret Agent, and It Was Just an Accident as the 3. And I would say with the shortlist appearance, Surat would be the most likely one. I was originally planning to go with an out-of-nowhere nomination, and my dark horse would be Late Shift from Switzerland. Probably because since the star of the film is Leo Benesch, who was in The Teacher's Lounge 2 years ago and September 5 last year, I probably have stated that if that gets nominated, and I might be regretting not predicting it, but if it does, I would say the next big movie Leo Benesch would do, I could see her be on the road for a future Oscar nomination. You also have Left-Handed Girl. You have, obviously, last year's big Oscar winner, Sean Baker, as producer and a writer of the film, although this category does not nominate the filmmakers. It's the country's the nomination. Argentina's Bellin, which was at Critics' Choice. Germany's Sound of Falling, shortlisted for cinematography. Kukula shortlisted for makeup and hairstyling. The President's Cake got a DGA nomination. And Homebound was 3rd place for the International People's Choice at TIFF. 8 of them have a possibility to get in that 5th slot, but I am going to go with the safer bet and go with The Voice of Hin Rajab over the ones that I'm going with, like Late Shift, No Other Choice, or Left-Handed Girl. And then for animated feature, does anyone not have Arco, Elio, K-Pop Demon Hunters, Little Amelie, The Character of Rain, and Zootopia 2? I mean, like, you have Demon Slayer, the movie, which showed up, at PGA and BAFTA long list. I don't think The Bad Guys 2 is not happening, even though I don't have that in. I will probably have to put that at number 10, since I don't have that screenshot that I have. But movies based on animated series don't get in, unless if Demon Slayer was a show, let me know, but they don't like to do that except for Shaun the Sheep. In Your Dreams was at Critics' Choice, and Endless Cookie and Boys Go to Jupiter were at the Indie Spirits. I think it's Demon Slayer that could be the one that might switch out Elio, but I think they're going to go with a more safer, blander choice with Elio. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is time. We are finally into the big 8 categories here. So, for adapted screenplay, does anyone not have Begonia, Frankenstein, Hamnet, One Battle After Another, and Train Dreams? Probably the only major outskirts I would say would be No Other Choice or Wake Up Dead Man and Knives Out Mystery, and especially I would say Nuremberg after how well it did in the BAFTA long list. But it also did well in the Oscar shortlist as well. But I can almost see Nuremberg being like the Mauritanian thing at the BAFTAs, but less so. So yeah, I don't think Nuremberg's not going to happen, but I think these are going to be the 5 in general. So basically, Knives Out is going to go 2 out of 3 for a screenplay nomination. Okay, for original screenplay, here we go with this one. I have It Was Just an Accident, Marty Supreme, Sentimental Value, Sinners, and thanks to Julia Roberts probably doing a grassroots campaigning on the Golden Globe ceremony the day before final nomination voting, I wonder if members of the writers' branch have heard what she said and might go with the grassroots campaigning nomination for Sorry Baby. Yes, that's right. I am going with the surprise Sorry Baby nomination here. I think Julia Roberts saying that at the Golden Globes is kind of reminded me when Cate Blanchett said Andrea Riseborough into Leslie when she did her acceptance speech at the Critics' Choice Awards for Best Actress. So I was leaning towards The Secret Agent originally, but when somebody brought that up in a final nomination prediction video about Roberts saying that at the Golden Globes the day before final nomination voting began, yeah, I think a lot of people in the industry are probably going to be following what she had said. I could have also said Weapons here as well, but I would have been a little bit more confident if I did stated that for Best Picture or Amy Madigan was going to win, but right now I'm not really sure where Madigan is at the moment. But I think what Julia Roberts said at the Globes, I think that's going to lean to a surprise nomination for Eva Victor here. For Supporting Actress, I have Odessa Zion in Marty Supreme, Ariana Grande in her lead performance in Wicked for Good, barely, Ignaz Badadir Lilias in Sentimental Value, Amy Madigan Weapons, I can't believe I'm finally putting her in for the first time, and Tiana Taylor in One Battle After Another. I mean, Weapons getting that PGA nomination, and Madigan not missing anywhere, even though we don't have BAFTA nominations. I think she's this. Grande is now the vulnerable one. But the only reason I have her getting in here is because I do have The Girl in the Bubble getting in for original song. That's the only reason. Even though Wicked for Good, Miss SAC Ensemble, PGA, underperforming BAFTA long list, and Grande not winning, I think the fact if they do nominate The Girl in the Bubble, I think Grande will have to be in there. So I think this might be the first category. That or support. I think supporting actor is going to be the first one to announce their nominations, I think. And this will be the second to last one. And, like, if we see Grande in there, then The Girl in the Bubble is in there. But if it's not, then Grande is in trouble. And I can almost see big mainstream headlines saying Grande was the big snub of that year's Oscars. But even though Wicked for Good has not been a critically great movie reviewed compared to the original film. So yeah, Wumi Masako would have been my choice, but I had to really think about, like, would they nominate Grande just so they can nominate The Girl in the Bubble, even though the acting branch and the music branch are completely different voting process, but this feels like almost like an ABC demand thing. Because if the Oscars already started streaming their ceremony on YouTube, they would have not said Grande. They probably would have said Wumi Masako in Sinners. And she is definitely, obviously, the SAG nomination helps. She's guaranteed getting in at BAFTA because she's British. I am a bit worried Gwyneth Paltrow could be the one out of nowhere. She is shortlisted at BAFTA. Because they could do the Belfast route where they go with the veteran one instead of the new one. But Odessa Zion is the daughter of Pamela Adlon. And it's now kind of feeling like even though it's odd because it's a movie starring Chalamet, Odessa Zion is definitely feeling more like the Monica Barbaro of this year. Supporting actor, does anyone not have Benicio del Toro in One Battle After Another, Jacob Elordi in Frankenstein, Paul Mescal in his lead performance in Hamnet, Sean Penn in One Battle After Another, and Stellan Skarsgård in Sentimental Value? Mescal could be in a bit trouble here. Because with awarding winning Critics' Choice, Skarsgård winning Globe, all 5 of them are in the BAFTA shortlist. And then I think it was, Skarsgård missing SAG, but that was because they really did not care about any non-English films that year, this year in general. Like, Mesco really could be in trouble. The only outskirts would be maybe one of the two Sinners people, with either Miles Caden, who got in at SAG, or Delroy Lindo, who got in at BAFTA long list. So it would probably be between one of the two Sinners guys if they only want to go with one of the one battle people with Sean Penn or Del Toro, or would they snub Paul Mescal? So it would just really depend. If Mescal miss as well as Hamnet missing other categories, that's not really good news for Hamnet's Best Picture status. For actress, does anyone not have Jessie Buckley in Hamnet, Rose Byrne in If I Had Legs I'd Kick You, Chase Infinity in her supporting performance in One Battle After Another, Renate Reinsve in Sentimental Value, and Emily Stone in Begonia? Yeah, I don't think this needs no explanations. The only person that I can see coming in, and a lot of people would not be happy about it, for some people who didn't like the film, Kate Hudson in Son Son Blue. I mean, it is shortlisted for cinematography. She got the SAG nomination. She's BAFTA shortlisted, so I could see some people going with her. Unless Eva Victor does get that out of nowhere nomination for Best Actress for Sorry Baby, which I should put her now in number 10 now because of the grassroots campaigning, but I think that would make more sense for original screenplay than actress. And then for Best Actor, I have Timothée Chalamet in Marty Supreme, Leonardo DiCaprio in One Battle After Another, Michael B. Jordan in Sinners, Wagner Moura in The Secret Agent, and Jesse Plemons in Begonia. With the Guild Surgeons and BAFTA long list mentions of Begonia, Plemons, I think it's going to jump into that 5th slot over Ethan Hawke in Blue Moon or Joel Edgerton in Train Dreams. If somehow they overperform Frankenstein and they nominate Oscar Isaac, that's just like they favored the movie a lot too much, or Netflix just basically did their heavy campaigning nomination status they did like last year with Emilia Perez. Because a lot of people would say, even though a lot of people do like Frankenstein, but there might be a lot of people think it did not deserve a lot of nominations. And then for Best Director, I actually did not change at all. It's still Chloe Zhao for Hamnet, Jafar Panahi for It Was Just an Accident, Josh Safdie for Marty Supreme, Paul Thomas Anderson for One Battle After Another, and Ryan Coogler for Sinners. And I almost wanted to say Joachim Trier for Sentimental Value, but him or Guillermo del Toro, it's just too easy to predict. I almost would have said Kilber Mendoza Fidoli for The Secret Agent if that film won Best Motion Picture Drama at the Golden Globes. But since it didn't, I'm not going to go with that filmmaker, but he could actually potentially make it. I still think Panahi could still do it, because with the Palme d'Or connection and the neon film thing. But the thing about it is, I kind of mentioned this in documentary feature. What's going on right now in Iran, that could probably put in a lot of Oscar voters that might be seeing that, what's going on right now in the country, and they know Panahi is from Iran, and if they want to show the support to the citizens of Iran against the government, they could actually nominate him. And I think with the recent events going on with Iran, I think they might actually do go with Jafar Panahi. Safdie is obviously a little bit vulnerable because I believe he wasn't at the Golden Globes. Zhao could also be vulnerable as well. But if she does get snubbed, and if they don't replace her with either Joachim Trier or Guillermo del Toro, then you know for a fact the news media is going to bitch and complain that there is no women nominated for director. Even though this is a previous winner here, and the only previous winner that is going to be nominated here. Same thing with Guillermo del Toro, that is a possibility, but I think del Toro is probably guaranteed the 5th one at DGA that's not going to make it. But if Zhao doesn't make it, we're going to see the return of the hashtag #OscarSoMale, and then many people are going to demand that the Academy should nominate a woman every year, kind of almost like what the BAFTAs do it, but it would be an unfair advantage because it's more about the movie, not about the person. Now, Coogler still could be a shocking snub, because if my theory would be correct, if it's the one film per studio rule in the category for final nominations, where it can only be one film from the same studio. But with Coogler getting a lot of precursor wins, and obviously him being the original screenplay frontrunner, and obviously with it potentially leading the nominations with one battle after another, I mean, you gotta have to say him, otherwise it would be a big mistake. So I would say Shao, Safdie, and Panani are the vulnerable ones. I think PTA is the only one I think that's 100% locked. I would say Coogler is like 95%. But I think PTA is 100% locked for Best Director. All the others could be potentially vulnerable. Like, what if Yorgos Lanthimos comes in a last-minute resurgence? What if The Secret Agent does something so well? But I think it's right now between these 9. And then for Best Picture, I have Begonia, Frankenstein, Hamnet, It Was Just an Accident, Marty Supreme, One Battle After Another, The Secret Agent, Sentimental Value, Sinners, and Train Dreams. I was tentative originally not going to go with The Secret Agent since it did lost the motion picture drama at the Golden Globes. But just recently, that along with It Was Just an Accident and Sentimental Value just getting announcing for Criterion lineups, that means if they're getting Criterion lineups, then they're getting in for Best Picture. So I think those 3 are going to get in. So Neon will have 3 movies up for Best Picture. Warner Brothers will have their 2. And then you have Focus Features ended up getting the 2 with Resurgence of Begonia. And then you have the 2 Netflix ones for Frankenstein and Train Dreams. So A24 is going to be the one that would have the 1 movie in the category with Marty Supreme. Now, Universal could do the same thing with Wicked for Good. Or maybe Warner Brothers would do their other 3rd candidate with Weapons. Maybe F1 the movie if they want to go with 4, but I don't think so. Sarat might be an underestimate, but I think it would have had a lot more, like, I would say more of a resurgence if it was, like, more in candidacy, like, for best casting or, like, original screenplay or something like that. So, and then Avatar, I think it's even more likely than no other choice, honestly. And even though I have Wicked for Good getting a couple of nominations, including for Rondé, it feels like it's going to be the Black Panther Wakanda Forever of this season, even though Wakanda Forever got a PGA nomination and Wicked for Good did not. So, in terms of my final nomination prediction status of the most nominations, I have Sinners tying the all-time Oscar record with All About Eve, Titanic, and La La Land, receiving 14 nominations. It could be the all-time Oscar nominated if they go with 15, 16, or even 17 if they do nominate all 3 supporting actors. But that might be a little bit too much. One Battle After Another does kind of barely behind with 13. Frankenstein with 11. Hamnet with 9. Begonia, Marty Supreme, and Wicked for Good with 7. Oddly enough, with Wicked. Sentimental Value with 6. It Was Just an Accident and Train Dreams with 4, The Secret Agent with 3, and then I have F1 the movie, K-Pop Demon Hunters, which is not mentioned on that awards expert tally I saw, and Sarat with 2. So, that's my official lock-in for my final Oscar nomination predictions for the month of January and in terms in general. And then this Thursday, we'll see all the nominations, so see you then.